Time for insulation. Alright, I wanted to do a sound test before you get too far into the insulation, so I just put this one bat in, but this is basically what it sounds like without any insulation in the room, and now we're going to do another test at the end of what it sounds like when the room is fully insulated. Let's get to it. This wall here already had insulation as it's an exterior wall, and here I'm just adding in a new vapor barrier as I tore the old one out during the demolition. This is basically what it sounds like without any insulation in the room, and now we're going to do another test at the end of what it sounds like when the room is fully insulated. Alright, so here's what it sounds like now with all the insulation in. Hopefully I sound a little bit better. Obviously insulation is used for heating and cooling purposes mainly, however sound absorption is another big benefit. So hopefully all that work was worth it and that I sound a little bit better now than I did before. Now let's move on to the next topic. And that next topic is drywall. As you may be able to tell, it's pretty hard getting a 4x8 sheet of drywall into this tiny little bathroom, but I just was barely able to manage. I've done some drywall patching in the past, but never a full room of drywall, so this will be a new experience for me. And I highly recommend picking up this tool that you see me using here. I was able to use it to mark out all of my stud locations, but you can also use it to draw out lines so you can cut your drywall nice and straight. I'll make sure to link it down in the description as well as all the other tools that you see me using. To cut out the holes for the outlets, I used my oscillating tool, and then in order to screw the drywall into the wall, I used a particular bit on just my standard drill, and it worked just fine to make sure that the screws were at the right depth. They do make a particular tool for this, however it is a bit expensive. I haven't test fit this, so we're going to see if it works. Doing drywall with just one person is pretty difficult, but it is possible. I just gotta make sure that I have my drill nearby so I can screw these sheets in without it falling before I let go. Also, when buying your materials for this project, you want to make sure that you're buying drywall specific screws, as they have a special coating on them that allows the mud to stick to the head. Here I had to go around the water line for the toilet, and I tried to make my hole as small as possible, but it was just a little bit too small. Not too worried about damage, as this will all be covered with a baseboard anyway. And here's just a little look into the minutia of hanging drywall. Hitting the shower. Whew.
And so here's the best way that I found to cut drywall. After already marking out a line with my blue T-square, I cut it with a utility knife on the back side of the drywall, scoring it maybe a couple times. Then I can just kick it with my knee and it should break nicely along that seam. Then you can turn it around and cut the front of the drywall, and try not to rip the paper as fast as you can. For large openings like this window, I decided to hang the full sheet of drywall and then cut out the window after, and I found this a lot easier. They do make a tool called the RotoZip to cut out things like this, however I just used my oscillating tool and it wasn't too bad. I also had one outside corner, so I put in this vinyl strip to make the mudding process a lot easier. And so now here's where we're at. It's crazy how much a room can transform once you put up all the drywall, and I'm pretty proud with all of the seams. Everything is really nice and it shouldn't be too hard to mud, especially around the outlets. I tend to cut the holes too big sometimes, but you want to make them precise so that the outlets fit nicely, and it went really well this time.
Alright, so now we have all of our drywall up and now we can start taping and mudding. Let's get to it.
In total, I did about 3 coats of mudding, sanding in between each coat, and I found I got pretty good results using this. I started by filling all of my screw holes, and then I moved on to the seams, first by pre-filling them, then putting in my tape, and then going back over it with my drywall knife to sink that tape into the mud. I then moved on to the corners, first by creasing my tape to a 90-degree angle, then placing it into the mud, similar to the other seams, but I did buy a special 90-degree tool for this to spread out the mud, and I highly recommend it if you've never done mudding before, as it makes it a lot easier. The last step was cutting out the niche. I bought a prefab niche from Schluter Systems, and it just was able to fit directly in between the studs here nicely. And that's going to be a wrap on this week's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something along the way. Really excited for how this bathroom's turning out. Getting drywall up is a big step in the process, and it really starts to feel like a room at this point. I was a little bit nervous tackling this project, as I had never done a full room of drywall, especially all by myself, but I was actually really surprised and proud of the end result. All of the walls came out really nice and smooth, and once we get primer up, you'll see just how smooth they really are. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a like, as it really helps out the channel. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, as we post a new DIY video every single Saturday, and I'm going to continue to cover all the steps in this bathroom renovation. Next week we'll be waterproofing the shower, so get subscribed and stay tuned. And as always, thanks for watching and happy building. See you next week.